All right, guys, so we're moving on from the asymptotes, and we're going to talk about variations. You've seen stuff like this before in Algebra 1. It's basically just throwing some stuff into an equation and solving. It's pretty easy. Just take it slow and just kind of watch how I do it, and everything else will fall into place. So we have two different equations we're going to use. We have direct variation, and we have inverse variation, okay? See how they're different. One is multiplication, one is division, okay? What we're going to be doing is solving for k. K is the constant of variation. It's sort of like the slope a little bit. So I'm going to show you how to throw these in and which ones to use. And it's really easy to know which ones to use because it always starts like this. If y varies directly. If you look at the second one, it says if y varies inversely. That's telling you which equation to use. So on number one, it says y varies directly. I have y equals k times x. Now the next thing they're going to do is they're going to give us something. They're going to say y varies directly as x and y is 25 when x is 15. Then they're going to ask us what x is when y is something. So we're going to deal with these first two numbers here in red first. We're going to plug those in. Well, if y is 25, we don't know what k is, but we know x is 15. Now you could put k 15 or 15k. It doesn't make a difference. Either way, I'm going to solve for k by dividing by 15. And yes, you're going to get fractions here a lot. And you end up with k equals 25 over 15, which when we simplify, and you definitely will want to simplify, is 5/3. Okay? Now, I know what k is. I'm going to plug it in. Y equals 5/3 x. And now I've got my equation and I can solve the rest. So now what they're telling us to do is, now that I've got k, I'm going to plug in the second y they gave me, 40. And I'm going to equal it to 5/3 x, and now I can solve for x and find out what it is. So I'm going to multiply both sides by the denominator of that fraction just to clear it out. That gives me 120 equals 5x. And then, of course, we can divide both sides by 5, and we get the answer to the question, x is 24. So really not any big deal. Just be careful, and if you need to use a decimal, like 5/3 would have been 1.66666. You really don't want to do that. Try to deal with the fraction. But if it was something that came out to be like 1.2, that would probably be okay. Let's look at the next one now. This one was y varies inversely. So y equals k over x. That's the only difference. We're still going to work it exactly the same way. It says, and y is 22 when x is 6. Let's plug those in. Y is 22. When x is 6. Now we can multiply both sides by the denominator, clears it out pretty quick, and I got k is 132. And then same as last time, we fill it out. Y equals 132 over x. And now we can just solve. And they actually gave us a pretty easy one here. It says, find x when y equals 15. So we have 15 equals 132 over x. We multiply both sides by the denominator. X times 15 is 15x. They cancel over here and give us 132. And then, of course, we divide by 15. So I got x I actually put it in a decimal because it was a nice one, 8.8. And there you go. So really not very tough. I suggest that you try the last one by yourself real quick. It says if y varies directly as x, so y equals kx. Fill it out and see what you can do. I hope that you took the time to do it. You can pause and do all that, all you need. I'm going to go ahead and get to work on it. It says y is 12 when x is 16. So 12 equals, and I'm just going to do 16k again. Just write it like that. I'm going to divide both sides by 16. 12 over 16 simplifies to 3/4. You might have used 0.75. That's okay. Y equals 3/4 x. So far, so good. Says find y when x is 36. Well, that's the easiest way. So y equals 3/4 times 36. You could use a calculator or do whatever you need to do, but you end up with y equals 27. So really not too bad. Take your time, watch your math, and hopefully you've downloaded Desmos by now and you're using that to help get some of this stuff. But a lot of you have phone calculators that can do some of the simplifying stuff too. So let's move on to the second page. This is a little bit different, but not much. Okay, it says when a quantity varies directly as the product of two or more quantities, the variation calls joint variation. So we're going to be dealing with joint variation. It's easy to spot them because they'll say jointly. And the other thing is they'll have more than two variables. So these are going to have three variables. But essentially it works the exact same way that it has, okay? Excuse me. So let's just look at the first one. I'll show you how to set it up. So if R varies jointly as S and T and inversely as U, and R is 18, S is 2, T is 3, U is 4, find all this other stuff. Let's deal with that when we come to it. The first thing we need to know how is to write the equation. So first, you're going to take the very first variable it asks or tells you to, R, and you're going to put R equals, okay? R is varying whatever as the rest. Then it says S and T and inversely to U. Well, we're talking about inversely, so it's a fraction. And the two that come before inversely are going to go on the top with your K, because we always have to have a K. All right, that's our goal, is to find it. And it says inversely is U. The stuff that comes after goes in the denominator. Now, it looks like this is going to be terrible, but I promise you it really doesn't get bad at all. Let's plug in everything they tell us before find, okay? They tell us that R is 18. They tell us, we don't know K, remember. They say S is 2. I'm just going to put it in parentheses here. And T is 3. And that U is 4. Now, we just have to do a little simplification here, and we can figure this out. 2 times 3 is 6. So I really have 6K over 4. I'm going to multiply both sides by the denominator. We've been doing that a lot. I'm going to come up here, guys. Okay, so I have the times, both sides times 4. Let's see, 4 times 18 would be 72. And then I'd be left with the 6K. And then, of course, we divide by 6, and we get our K. I got 12. Then we just do it all over again, essentially, like we're on the last page. So my actual equation is R equals 12 ST over 4. And then I'm going to plug in the rest of them. So it's kind of lengthy. It's really not that hard mathematically. It's probably harder to say it than it is to do it. So now it wants us to find S. So we're going to be finding S. Let's see, when R is 6, we've got 12 and S. And then when T is 2 and U is 4. And now we just solve this. So let's go ahead and do this. 12 times 2 gives me 24S over 4. And you could do this several different ways. I'm going to go ahead and just know that 24 divided by 4 is 6. So 6 equals 6S. So S equals 1. The other way you could have played that is multiply both sides by 4. You'd have 24 equals 24S, and it still would have come out the same way. So I know that's not super fun, but it's really not that bad. Try it out and see what you think. Now, this varies jointly, so this is just all multiplication, but it has something kind of different. But it sets up the same way. So I know that X is the first variable, so I'm going to say X equals. And I know I'm going to have a K, all right? But it says it varies jointly as Y, so I put a Y, and Z squared. So that's really the only thing different. So jointly, you just line up all the variables that come after with a K, and then the one before is the very first one. So it tells us some stuff here. X is 100. When Y is 2. I put in Y. It should have been 2. And then Z is 5. And remember, that's squared, so you have to be really careful there. So let's take this out in a couple of steps. First, 5 squared is 25. Which means I really have 100 equals 50K. So you do that however you want. You can put that in your calculator if you're careful. I know a lot of you can do that in less than the steps I did. And I got, when you divide by 50, I got K to equal 2. So then we plug it in. X equals 2Y, Z squared. And we finish it up. So let's get this last little bit done. It says find X when Y is 4 and Z is 3. X equals 2 times 4 times 3 squared. And that's a pretty easy one. X equals 2 times 4 times 9. 2 times 4 is 8. 8 times 9 is 72. So remember, on this one, the homework is optional, but you're going to see quite a few of these on the quiz because the 7-3 was just the graphing, and it was more of a just seeing it than doing it. And then we're going to have another variation word problem in the next section that'll be on this quiz. So practice those up. Ask me questions if you got them. Good luck, guys.